Good morning again, and thank you, everyone. As I was kind of sitting yesterday, waiting for inspiration, what came to me, what started to come to me, was just a feeling of elation, a feeling of joy, just a feeling of lightness and happiness and frivolity, and just kind of lighten up, kind of came through. And then I was reminded of the passage in the New Testament that I'm sure many of you have heard in different ways and forms. But the idea was that parents were bringing their children to see Jesus, and the people that were surrounding Jesus, his handlers, the people that were kind of trying to take charge, they didn't want the children to go to him. They were pushing the children back. And the parable, remember, parable is a teaching story. The story is designed to stay with us. Even if we don't yet understand the meaning, we remember the story, and it works on us over time. And the story says that Jesus rebuked them. He became agitated or adamant, and he said, no, 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 no. Let them come. Let the children come. Let them come to me. And you can kind of get this picture. The one, of course, that I create is this picture of Jesus in his robe and his beard, and he's kind of sitting under a tree in the shade. And all the little children are coming, and they're just running up, and he's hugging them. And the words that he says are, the kingdom of heaven is made up of such as these. And unless you receive the kingdom as the little children, the way that they do, in the manner that they do, you can't enter the kingdom. See? Beautiful story, beautiful image. And I kind of got this feeling of this joy that in our approach to the divine, which is what the person of Jesus represents, right? Our approach to the divine, the point where the divine becomes human, is the Christ. And that Christ exists in each and every one to the degree that we will receive it, to the degree that we will enter it. It is there, and it has created us out of itself. But we have to approach it as the children. So what does that mean? What does that mean? And one of the images that comes to me is, I remember we talked about this a couple weeks ago, being a little kid waiting for the ice cream truck to come. I don't know if you had that experience where you lived, but we did. And the neighborhood was laid out such that you could hear the bells on the truck when the truck was just like a block away, and we knew it was coming, and you could hear the sound of the motor of the truck as the driver would get in and move a little bit and then stop in front of another group of kids and eventually make its way around the corner and start to come down our street. And I don't know who made the rules, but there was a marshalling station. There was a place where all the kids, within like maybe 5 or 10 houses where I lived, we all went to the same spot, and we stood at the same spot and waited for that truck, And such joy. Everybody was standing there, and we had, our quarter in our hand or whatever it was in those days. What are you going to get today, And my favorite was the Good Humor Man had a toasted almond bar. It was like a vanilla ice cream bar, but instead of a chocolate coating on the outside, it was dipped in toasted almonds. And that was my go-to. That was my go-to choice, And everybody had their favorite, Some wanted the cones, and some wanted the ice pops, and each one had their favorite little Dixie cup or something. But just the sheer joy of the children standing there in anticipation of the good, the good that they were about to receive. And I invite you to find an experience in your own childhood. Find an experience that represents that joy, in which you actually felt that joy, Another thing that comes to mind is very popular, the videos of the children at the birthday parties trying to break open the piñata, you know. And of course, normally it's on Funniest Videos where something goes awry with the bat and the adult holding the cord gets hit. But the little ones hopping up and down, you know, they all know that there's something good in that piñata. They each want to be the one that breaks it open, but that really isn't so important as it gets broken, you know, as it gets broken open, because there's a good inside there. There's something good. There's something that they want. And they just jump up and they just jump up and they jump down and they're cheering and they're rooting. And try to find that point in your life, or points in your life, where that sheer joy was just there for, you know, just joy, just being alive, just being on fire, just expecting your good. And to me, that is one of the things that comes to mind with what is the meaning of this parable? You know, what is the meaning of this? And of course, many people have many different interpretations, and I suppose I'm just adding mine to that big body of work out there today. But what is the meaning of this? And it's very rich. It's a very rich couple of verses. There's only like 2 or 3 verses in this whole parable. You know, what is this thing called the kingdom? What is that all about? And what does it mean to receive it? We have to receive it as the children do, right? And only then can we enter it. We have to receive it, and then we can enter it. So it's very rich in ideas, very rich in our spiritual growth and trying to contemplate what this really means. And I remember reading at one point that there was a sect in Christianity around the 1600s, maybe the 1700s. I'm not sure, and I don't remember their name. And I hope I'm representing them properly. But the group took this literally. They took this idea literally, that you had to come as the little children. And as adults, even into adulthood, they continued to play the games that they played when they were children. So they might be working in the field, and then they would get together and they would play a game of Ring Around the Rosie, or a game of hide and seek, or something like that. So they continue to behave as children. They continue to play as children. They continue to do the things that brought them joy and fun when they were children, because they took it literally, that if they wished to receive the kingdom, if they wished to enter the kingdom, they needed to be as little children. Now, I take it a little bit differently. I don't think literally we need to run around and play hide and seek, although that would probably be great fun if we could all get together and do that. You know, it's kind of like going back to the dances that they have now for people who never made it to their high school prom. You know, kind of going back in time and playing. Or think of the joy as an adult, as a grandparent, playing with your children, grandchildren, and teaching them the games. You know, and how adults love to play peekaboo, for example, with the babies. You know, and the babies will giggle, and the adults will make silly faces. But just imagine the sheer joy of that moment. Just the joy. It's just, yeah, I don't know that even the word joy does it justice. But the feeling that you have when there's no agenda, when there's no problem to solve, you know, there's nothing to try to get, there's nothing to try to make happen. It's just, you know, it's just almost silliness in the moment for the sake of silliness. I laugh because the definition of work is the expenditure of energy to accomplish a purpose. I'm paraphrasing, of course. The expenditure of effort, the expenditure of effort in the form of work to accomplish something. You're trying to accomplish something, you know. What are you trying to do when you go to work? Well, for most people, it's very simple. They're just trying to make money. That's it. Just that's it. You know, other people are trying to do things. They're trying to create something in their work, you know. But the idea of work itself is that we're expending energy for a definite purpose. Now you contrast that with the idea of play, because as a child and as a parent, we can see that the little ones expend a lot of energy at play, So sometimes they would come back in at night and they would be so tired that they would fall asleep at the dinner table, they'd be sitting there trying to eat their supper, and boom, the little head would go down on the table, or they'd make it through dinner and they'd sit on the floor, and the next thing you know, you'd hear them snoring. They'd be sprawled out on the floor. They gave it everything they had out there playing that day, So if work is the expenditure of effort, of energy to accomplish something, then it would seem to me that play is the expenditure of energy without any definite purpose. Just for doing, just for being, just for the joy of it, and sometimes we work harder at play than we do at work. We will give more to play than we will give energy to work. So think of this idea then of the children, of being as the little child, and just giving that energy, just letting that energy flow through, but without this sense of work, without this sense of struggle, right? Without this sense of I got to, I ought to, I must, and all these kind of things. So perhaps the first thing to consider then is, what is this thing called the kingdom? What are we even talking about, the kingdom? And again, there's lots of different interpretations to what is this thing called the kingdom. As I mentioned the other week, for some people it's a physical place that's far, far away, and you have to go through the process of death in order to get there. Kind of like the idea of a heaven. That's where the kingdom is. The kingdom's out there somewhere. But if we look in the New Testament, if we look at the teachings of Jesus, the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, 6, and 7, the teachings of Jesus were about this kingdom, which is here, which is now. And as I said, in the Gospel of Thomas, we mentioned, it says the kingdom, the disciple says, well, where is this kingdom? Where's this place you're always talking about? Where is this kingdom? What is this? And the answer was, it's everywhere present, but people do not see it. So Jesus was always talking about the kingdom and the availability of the kingdom, and it was something that was located inside of us. And I tend to think of it more as a state of consciousness than a physical place. An attitude, a point of view. A realization, perhaps, is the best word that I can come up with. A realization. There is something there, but we don't always realize it. And when we come into the conscious realization of it, we enter it, we receive it, we experience it. And the best way that I can describe it, to try to understand it, is what Dr. Holmes calls the conscious awareness of the experience of the presence of God. The conscious awareness of the experience of the presence of God. Now, the presence of God is always, right? It's not like it's here sometimes and it's gone sometimes, right? The divine is the eternal now. It is the eternal omnipresence. So it's not like God can leave us and God can come back to us and God can hide from us. But it is within our ability to not be aware of it, to be thinking about other things, to be distracted from it. As I said last week, we have to keep our eyes single. There's so much going on in this world. There's so much going on around us every second of the day. You know, our phones are beeping at us constantly to call our attention to something. And yet the presence is there. As the poet says, lying in quiet repose, waiting for our acknowledgement, waiting for our discovery. So I believe the kingdom, as it relates to this parable, this kingdom that Jesus is talking about, is this living in conscious awareness of the presence and the activity of the divine. Right? We are consciously aware that we are experiencing that presence. We may be experiencing that presence and not be consciously aware of it. I would say that that's probably most of us most of the time. Right? It's here. It's nearer than our hands and feet. It's closer than our breath. It's what beats our heart. It's what moves our lungs. It is, in fact, the I that I think I am, which is kind of a deeper topic for another day. Joel Goldsmith gives us an affirmation to consider, and he says to keep reminding ourselves that the Christ, which is where the divine becomes human, the Christ is the I that I am. The Christ is the I that I am. Where did my consciousness come from? It has created it out of itself. Where did my body come from? It has created it out of itself. It is the energy that became the matter, that became the planet. It is all that there is. This kind of a mystical unity, this mystical awareness, this mystical oneness is what we're talking about. That is the kingdom. That is the kingdom. So what we're being told then is that the kingdom must be received, okay? And it must be received in a certain way, as the children, like the children do, in the way that the children do. And once we receive it, then we can enter it. Then we can enter it. So if we go back then to the characteristics of the way that the children might do it, as opposed to the way the way that the adults might do it, I think we kind of get a clue as to the sweet simplicity, the sweet simplicity of just being in the joy, of just being in the presence. I have Copland's music playing in the back of my head now. The Shakers, Copland's song, I'm trying to remember the name of the song, it had to do with simplicity. And he turned it into a great work, but it was written by a Shaker, and it was to express the simplicity and the joy of coming into the presence, right? Of just being with the divine. And that's what the Shakers' life was all about. They did everything that they did well because they believed that everything that they were doing was an expression of God's love. And if you're going to express God's love, you're going to do it the best you possibly can. Right? That's why the furniture was so good and lasted so long. Everything was simple, you know. The rooms that they met in had rows of pegs around the top wall so they could take the chairs up and hang the chairs up, and made it easier to clean the floors. The barn was built in a circle, and it was built into a hillside. So you didn't have to lift the hay bales up to get them into the loft. You drove the wagon up to the top level, you loaded the hay in there, and when it came time to feed the cows, you just threw the hay bales down into the center of the barn where the cows could all come. They all had their little pen, but their heads could reach into the hay. Everything was sweet simplicity, sweet simplicity. It doesn't take a whole lot, you know, for the children to to be happy. They can take a piece of paper and make an airplane, or fold it into a fan, or they can they can take a cardboard box and they can turn it into a rocket ship, you know. And where is that joy coming from? But from inside them, see, from inside their imagination, from inside their very being. They already have what they need. And it's simple. Now we as adults, intellect and ego tend to aid us in evolution and then hold us back in our spiritual growth. But our intellect loves to solve a problem. We have to have a problem to solve. You know, if there's no problem to solve, we'll think of one to solve. We'll think of something that needs to be done. You know, we'll try to think of something that other people have overlooked. We interpret what's going on in the news and we add meaning to it, and we come up with all of these different things that need to be explored. So I think that's one reason why mysteries and conspiracy theories are so popular, you know. The intellect is always looking for activity, for something to solve, for something to do. And sometimes we take that into our approach to God. God might be an intellectual problem that we're trying to figure out, we're trying to solve. But well, what is this thing called God anyway? You know, and what do all of the other religions teach about God? And is it even possible for us to know whether or not there is a God? Kind of the agnostic approach. And then we have the atheistic approach, which says, well, yes, it's possible for us to know, and there is no God. You know? And then you have all of these different religions that are telling us that there is a God, but they all have a different idea of what that means, you know. So we can intellectually get caught up into this internal discussion, this internal argument about what God is, whether there is a God, whether there isn't a God. You know, does it have a physical body like our body? Does it live in someplace else? Is it everywhere present? And all of these kind of things that philosophers might love. But they can serve to distract us, you see. Because while our mind, I don't know even if we can call it mind, while our intellect is spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning and thinking about all of these different things, we're not experiencing it. We're not experiencing God. We're thinking about God. We're experiencing our ideas of God. We're experiencing our concept of God, but we're not experiencing God. So the children come in sweet simplicity. I only want to be with you. And now I got Dusty Springfield in the back of my head. I only want to be with you. And the intellect comes and says, I want to know about you. I want to understand. I want to think. I want to have some kind of a mental image that makes sense to me. And what we are told over and over and over again on our path is we have to let go of those mental images. Right? Perhaps the Hindu teaching of neti neti says it best. Not this, not that. No, no. Whatever your idea of God is, it's not this, it's not that. No, no. Those are only your ideas, you see. Those are only your ideas. And we have to supersede those ideas. We have to transcend those ideas. We have to move beyond mind to the source of mind. We have to move beyond the intellect. The other thing that our intellect tends to do is we want to use God to solve our problems. Okay, God, now that I found you, you know, are you aware of the fact that I need money to pay the rent? Okay, God, now that I found you, are you aware of the fact that I need a significant other to come into my life? Are you aware that I need a better job? You know, and again, I love Joel Goldsmith. Goldsmith says, "Can you imagine God sitting there listening to all this and saying, 'You're telling me? You're telling me this? Why are you telling me this?'" You know. Why are you telling me this? And we tend to do that. And it's natural that we as human beings do that. We kind of come into an approach, our spiritual approach, we come in with an agenda. We come in with something that we want, you know. We may start out by thinking that there are things in our lives that are broken that we want God to fix. And we may get to the point where we fixed all of the things that we thought were broken, and now we want to be more creative. Now we want to have a greater expression of life. But we're still kind of caught up in that we want something. We have an agenda. We want to come into our divine contact. We want something to get better. And then we want to go back to our old ways, our old distractions, our old thoughts. And if we think of the little children coming, think of them as innocents. Think of them as coming without agenda. Think of them as coming just to be in the divine presence. Augustine, who said, I ask nothing of thee, not even thy love. I only want thee. I only want to be with you. I only want to be with you. I don't want you to fix anything. I don't want you to make anything any better than it already is. I'm not coming to you to receive the kingdom for that purpose, for any purpose. I only want to be with you. Now there are times in our lives when we become aware of a need or a desire, and we will use our spiritual practice. We will pray for a particular result, and that's fine. It's appropriate at that time. But there are also times where we need to just come as little children for the joy. And where does the joy come from? It comes from within. We need to come to release the joy that is already within us. We need to just be still and know. Now, in addition to the intellect, which kind of serves as a barrier for our experience of the divine, because we're trying to know intellectually that which is not knowable intellectually. The ineffable one, oh ineffable one. So we need to give up trying to know, trying to understand. We need to give up trying to get, trying to use. All of those things that we tend to go in our prayer life and ask to receive, ask believing that it is done. All of those things will take care of themselves if we receive the kingdom, if we enter it. Because in that conscious awareness of the experience of the presence and the activity of God, in that state of unity, in that state of bliss, whatever is appropriate is there. There's no need to even think I need this. It's there. It's the outpicturing of the consciousness of unity. So there's a time when we may be aware of a need or a want or a desire, even a desire to know God, and that serves as a motive force to bring us to the doorway. But then there comes a time where we have to leave all of that behind so that we can enter. We can enter. So the intellect likes to analyze, likes to weigh, likes to know, likes to think. And at some point we have to let all that go, and we just have to be joy. We just have to be joyful. We just have to be love. We just have to be loving. We just have to be excited to be here, you know. And not even have a reason why. If somebody said, why are you excited to be here? I say, I don't know. Doesn't matter. I'm excited. That's all that matters. And in our friend, the intellect's creation, the ego, see, the ego is, the intellect has formed an opinion about who I am and the way the world ought to be. It's my idea of I. And my idea of I is not who I am. My idea of I is only an idea of who I am. The I that I am is the divine love that created me out of itself. So as long as I think that there's an I that is separate from and apart from and different than that divine love, see, again, there's a barrier, a block, a boundary, a separation. So in the moment of coming to the threshold of the kingdom, the awareness of the presence of the divine, we have to be willing to let go of all of our opinions about who we are and the way things ought to be. The Sufis have a great teaching story that illustrates this. And the story goes that the Sufi master died, and he went to the pearly gates, you know. Now, of course, there are no pearly gates, but the stories always have them because they've got to have something to knock on. So the Sufi knocks on the door, and the voice of God comes from the other side of the door and says, "Who is it?" And the Sufi says, "It's me," and he says his name. And the voice from the other side of the door says, "I'm sorry, heaven's full right now. You're going to have to wait a while." And the Sufi waited a while, and he knocked on the door again, and the voice said, "Who is it?" And again he said, "It's me," and he said his name, and the voice said, "I'm sorry, heaven is full. You can't come in now." And this went on for several times. And finally the Sufi knocks on the door, and the voice on the other side says, "Who is it?" And the Sufi says, "It's thee." And the door opened. And the voice of God says, "There's no room for the both of us. As long as we think that we are separate from God, apart from God, different than this thing that we call God, we can't experience it. We will simply be experiencing our intellect and our ego's opinion as to what it should be like to experience the divine." So are we willing to be in the moment, spontaneous? Are we willing to make our contact with the divine simply for no other reason than the joy, the sheer joy of experiencing the presence of the divine? Can we go into that experience without a problem to solve, without without something to get, even if that getting is an egotistical feeling that, oh, I'm so good because I'm sitting here in the presence of God? To release and to let go of every and any expectation, and to just simply come and be in the presence. There's another teaching in the Sermon on the Mount, in what's called the Beatitudes, which if you look at the 8 Beatitudes, you know, they kind of summarize. They kind of summarize again very, very succinctly. They summarize the teachings of Jesus. And he said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for they shall see God." Now, there were a lot, as there are today, in those days, there were a lot of people who had very learned opinions about what the experience of God ought to be like. and what people needed to do to get to heaven, and how they had to pray, and who they had to give their money to, and all of those kind of things. But the poor in spirit have released those ideas. The poor in spirit are willing to say, I give up all preconceived notions of what has to happen here and what has to be done to make it happen. And I surrender. I surrender. See, that's another thing about being a child. You know, as a child we had limited resources, we had limited ability, you know. As an adult, if you show us something to do and we immediately try to figure out, well, can I afford to do that? Do I know how to do that? Can I afford to hire somebody who knows how to do that? Again, the intellect goes to work with problem solving, trying to analyze it and trying to get in there and work with it. And a child doesn't. The child doesn't have those resources. The child is dependent upon the goodness of the adults. The child has to surrender to that. Now, I realize that as children, we sometimes get pretty darn good at manipulating our parents, or our grandparents especially, to get what we want, you know. It's like the t-shirt says, if mom says no, go ask grandma. Right? The children learn how to do that. But the idealized child that we're talking about in the parable is one who might go and say, I don't have anything, you know, kind of like the little drummer boy carol that's so popular at Christmas. I don't have anything. I don't have anything to bring here except myself. In other words, my experience of the presence of the divine is not something that I can make happen. It's already happening, see? I can receive it. I can receive it by getting all of my human junk out of the way, by getting my intellect out of the way, by getting my ego out of the way, by getting the notion that I could possibly make it happen out of the way, by getting the notion that I have to work hard to make it happen out of the way, by giving up and letting go of every and any idea and just saying, I'm here, here I am. I'm excited to be here. I'm joyful to be here. I'm in love. I'm in love. So, this idea then of what the kingdom is the kingdom is the conscious awareness, being in the conscious awareness of the presence and the activity of the divine. Where can we do that? Only within our own being. And when can we do that? Only in the now. Only in the now. We can't do it tomorrow and yesterday's gone. There's only the now. And this is coming as a child. The children live in the moment, only in the now. You tell a kid something's going to happen tomorrow, it's like the end of the world to them, you know. Tomorrow's forever. I want it now. Only in the now. Only in the now. It's something we have to receive. It is a gift that we have to receive. In other words, we can't earn it. We can't make it happen. We can't force it to happen. We can't will it to happen, but we can clear away all of the things that distract our consciousness from it, so we discover that which is there. And again, we go back to the teaching story of the precious jewel at the bottom of the pond, and we're looking for it, and we're moving our hand everywhere, and we can't find it because we've disturbed the surface water and we've stirred up the mud, and we just have to be still. And then we can receive the gifts that were already given. And once we have done that, once we have received it, then we can enter it, see? We can be in it more consistently. Sometimes it comes as just a glimpse for a moment or an instant or a flash, you know. And it's there and it's like, wow. We experience it and it's overwhelming. one of the characteristics of the ineffable experiences, which is kind of like an oxymoron anyway. How can you have a characteristic to that which you can't describe? But when people are trying to describe that which is indescribable, it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. Paul was knocked off the horse. Right? Elijah was taken to heaven in a chariot of fire. It is ineffable. It is overwhelming. But all we can do is surrender to it. All we can do is to invite it and to celebrate it. And then we can enter into it more fully. Right? 91st Psalm says, He who abides dwells in the secret place, the shadow of the Almighty. We have to abide. We have to stay there. We just don't want to visit, you know. We want to stay there. He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide in the shadow of the Almighty, and has come to me. So let our approach then be as a child. Let our approach to the divine be one of joyful expectancy. Let our approach be innocent in that we are not coming with an agenda. We don't want God to fix anything or make anything better than it already is. We don't want God for any other reason than simply to be with God. To be with God. I ask nothing of thee, not even thy love. I only want thee. I only want thee. Let us be extremely joyful in this approach. Right? Release and let go of ideas of fear and unworthiness and all of those things, because this is a gift. This is a gift that must be received. And it's already been given, and it is already there, and the way we receive it is by letting go of everything unlike itself. We let go of distractions. We let go of the cares of the day, right? In another place, Jesus tells his disciple, don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow will take care of itself. Don't worry about where your food is going to come from. The divine takes care of the birds in the sky and the lilies in the field. How much more so will it take care of you? He was telling his disciples, the kingdom is what is most important. And the way that we enter is as little children, in joy, in enthusiasm, in excitement, in love. So I invite you today, please take some time today, wherever you are, just take some time to just sit. Bring yourself back, bring yourself back in time to a place where you experience that joy, that exuberance as a child over anything, whatever it was, and then take that feeling, take that very feeling, and bring it into a conscious invitation to accept the presence, to accept the activity, to receive the gift of the kingdom for no reason. For no reason. Divine love has created us out of itself and left us alone to make this discovery. In so doing, we develop our uniqueness. And coming back to the realization that it is here now. There is no apartness or separateness. God is all there is. In doing that, we are fulfilling our purpose of being a conscious collaborator of experiencing the joy and the presence of the divine in everyone and in everything, and knowing that it is the divine itself that is enjoying itself as us. And then we can let our self with a little s, our egotistical self, our intellectual self, we can let that get out of the way. We can be as the little children, loving, trusting, happy. And so it is.